Oh, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining us. It's Andy here looking at the Vauxhall Zafira B, and we're looking at a coolant leak. So it's a very slow leak, only maybe half an inch dropping in the coolant expansion tank, but enough to cause concern. So time to take a look before this gets any worse. So let's take a look. So what we're looking at, this is the Vauxhall Zafira 1.7 CDTI Ecotech engine, and you can see that the coolant is a little bit low. Now I'm normally quite good on coolant, so you can see the cold fill line should be up here, and you see we're down here. That's after a couple of days not topping up, so you can see we are losing a little bit of coolant. Yes, that's a new battery, by the way. The battery was the original for the car. It's a 2010, 2011, and it was the original battery, so yeah, it was time for a battery change. So anyway, so what we're looking at here is, you can see nice and dry around the expansion tank filler cap, so I don't think we're venting through the filler cap here. Having a look at the top end, looking at the hoses, that kind of thing, particularly around radiator area, that kind of thing, so you can just make out the radiator. Following down there, remember coolant, nice pink colour, so looking for pink colour, and we're not really seeing anything. I've had quite a long look over this car to try and find it. The hard part being it's a slow leak, so it's only very slight, so trying to find it is tricky. But what I'll do is I'll post a couple of photos that I've taken, had the car up on ramps, and from the bottom you can see just around about the exhaust manifold area, and above that is where the turbo is. I was starting to find a few spots of coolant. So following directly above the exhaust, that goes up to the turbo, and at the top of the turbo we have this assembly here. Now this is the EGR actuator. This here, just trying to get a good view, it's really restrictive in this part of the engine, unfortunately, but this metal component here is the EGR cooler. Now the idea is that EGR is the exhaust gas recirculation, so it takes some of the exhaust gas, passes it back through the intake. The idea is reducing emissions, that kind of thing, but it cools those exhaust emissions, so it's not putting high temperature back into the engine. So the EGR cooler has a coolant, it's a small radiator, so it does flow coolant around it, and from what I can tell, the problem we've got is somewhere in this region under here. Now this is the intake for the turbo. You can see it's connected to the airbox. That's a breather for the engine, and that goes down to the intake for the turbo. Now I think we need to get this pipe out the way so we can have a proper look at the coolant hoses that hide down this end of the engine. So that's going to be the job for today, getting access, taking a look, slowly working our way through methodically and find where the leak is coming from. Hopefully it's just going to be a pipe or a seal, and we can replace that in due course. So what I'm busy trying to do is to get this plastic piece, which is the turbo air intake, off, and the hard part is, and I'm not sure whether you'll be able to see this, down the bottom there is where that's on. Now, instead of using something like this where you can get a socket on it to release it, what they've got down the bottom, you can just about make it out, is a screw. So you've got to unscrew that to release the O-ring, the clamp, and then you can take it off. So trying to get a screwdriver. Now luckily what I'm doing is I've got a tool like this, and I'm trying to get that down there to undo it enough, and I should then be able to slide it out. So what I've done is, this is the turbo pipe, got that with a lot of prizing. As you can see, the bottom is on a screw fitting, and that was the difficult part. Actually, now that we've got to it, I can see it would actually have worked on a nut as well. So bear in mind, when we put it back on, it was in that position. I'm going to move it so it's down, there's more access from the bottom. So taking this off, we've got access to the turbo. What I have found is we've got oil in the air intake of the turbo, so it looks like the turbo seals are leaking slightly, so at some point the turbo is going to need replaced by the looks of it. That may account for the slight oil leak that I think I've mentioned on previous videos. Now we've got that out of the way, what we can do is take a look at what we've got down here, because that is where I think the water leak is coming from. So I'm going to take a closer look in there and see if we can find where the water leak is. So after getting in under where the turbo pipe was, looking at it, can see a little bit of dried coolant, so but it's further underneath this assembly here. So what we've now done is taken the battery off and currently undoing the battery box so we can get in, because it looks like the coolant leak actually might be here, because we've got a little bit of liquid showing. So I think if nothing else, we'll be able to see it on this pipe or underneath. So if we can get the battery box out, we can then check that part as well. So battery's out, I'm just unclipping all of the components and we'll get into this part. That's the battery holder removed, so we can now get in. Now looking down here, we can see this is damp, and looking at it, that's coolant coloured, so we're definitely getting coolant down there. Now looking on the header hose here, oh sorry, the expansion hose, that doesn't look wet. At least none that I can see as coolant on it, so I don't think it's this expansion hose. So looking further under, what we're going to need to do is try and look at a few of the other pipes down here and see if we can find where else it could be leaking from down in and around this region. So at the moment, still not really finding where the leak is. Again, because it's a slow leak, it's difficult to find, and you can see as I run my hands over any of the other components, they're not coming back wet at the moment. So it's definitely not right at the top of the engine, but I think we're in this sort of region down here, so might have to try and get in a little bit closer. Now that looks like a coolant leak to me, which if that's the case, that certainly looks like coolant to me. I think this section here is the thermostat, so it may be, yeah, this certainly looks like it. It looks like it might be a leaking coolant out of the thermostat, and actually you can see I've just managed to uncover even more liquid pooling down the bottom here, which is all coolant. So I think we're almost at it. I think it must be in... Ah, there we go. I've found it. I don't know if the camera saw when I squeezed that pipe. There we go. We've got a broken pipe by the looks of it. Coolant pipe. So it's this pipe here that it's leaking from, either around it or a slight hole in it. Looking at this, the amount that's starting to come out, I think that's going to be a hole. So what we're going to have to do to fix this is we're going to have to drain the whole coolant system and then take that pipe off, potentially replace it. But it looks like we've found where our problem is. So the plan, because it's the top radiator hose that we're working on, and you can see it's towards the top of the radiator here. So what I've done is, first of all, drained all the fluid out of the header tank, and the next step is I'm going to take the lower radiator hose off and drain a fair amount of coolant. Now in theory we don't need to take all the coolant out, so we'll see how we get on when I start draining it. But you can just see there's the clip for the lower radiator hose, so we'll take that off, get a bucket underneath and catch as much as we can. Now unfortunately directly below it is the horn and a few other things, so chances are this is going to make a bit of a mess. We'll try the drain. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's try the drain, see if it works. Very rarely do these things work for me, but they're normally blocked and clogged up. But we'll give it a go. Might make less mess, but who knows. Just to give you a bit of an idea how well today's going. Earlier today I did also I managed to get a screw stuck in the back tyre from an industrial estate I was at. And also the camera mount, the tripod that I use, has also just damaged itself. So really today's not going so well. So let's see how we get on here. One thing, the car does look like it's trying to empty its coolant itself, so it might not be as much as I need to empty out as I first thought, but let's try and catch as much of it as possible, trying of course not to get this all on me or all on the camera or any combination of the above. Like I say, based on my luck today, I'm not holding out much hope. I've no idea whether you'll be able to see what I'm doing either. Actually, let's just see. No, probably not. And there goes the tripod again. Okay, I'll continue on. If you can see what I'm doing, then great. I'm trying to twist the drain. Oh, and there we go. Wow. It looks like to me the drain is actually working. Well, I'm going to show you an interesting bit of Vauxhall design. Probably my stupid fault for not noticing this, but let's give up with the tripod completely because it's snapped. What I'll do is, sorry, it's going to get a bit wobbly from here on in. So there you can see the adjuster, sorry, the valve. Now I thought it would come out of here, but no, that's actually a mount for the radiator. So for future I need to get a pipe to attach to there so that it's not going to do that. But all in all, based on my success today, we're getting closer anyway. So let's get this drained. Right, let's have a look. So this is the bottom end and this is the top end, where when we were squeezing it we were getting a leak. I'm not seeing anything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the turbo pipe back on now, because it's clear we don't need to go from that side. We can get to everything we need to from where I've removed the battery tray, so that's good news. You can see it's got dark out here now, and what I'm doing is I'm using my rather nifty Rolino camera photography light that was sent to me very kindly from Rolino. Not specifically what it was for, but it works rather well for this kind of job, so that's coming in rather handy now that it's getting dark out here. So I'm going to get the turbo pipe back on again, get that all done, and then we can work from there. Here's a quick tip, folks. You know the turbo pipe that I'm trying to put back on here? Well, when it came off just like this. Yeah, you can't see this very clearly because of the light in the background, yeah? Now, attached to the turbo is actually another rubber pipe, and that rubber pipe is this one here. Now, the hard part is when that's still attached to the turbo and you're pushing against it like so, what happens is it bulges from one of the sides and you can't easily get that back together. But this just slides onto the turbo, so what you can do is take this off, and you can see it's quite a tight fit, but doing it out here you can get it into the plastic piping in the right place and then slide the whole piece back onto the turbo as it is, and that makes it go on much easier. Just a little tip if you're putting a turbo pipe back on. It's taken me quite a while. Day 2, back to daylight now, which makes things a little bit easier. So what we've got is there's the thermostat, and right behind it you can see the damaged pipe. So a couple of options here. I'm not going to be able to get the pipe ordered in time, but got a couple of options. First of all, going to try and seal it with amalgamating tape and a metal bond agent. If that fails, possibly chop it out and replace a part of it with a rubber pipe as a temporary fix until we can do the proper repair. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the thermostat body housing off first, get a little bit more access, and then we can hopefully just try the repair and see how we get on. Right, here we go with the temporary fix, part 1. I'm using this stuff, this Flowmaster external leak sealer. It's like a clear silicone when you squeeze out the tube, and you can see what I've done. I've tried to put it around where the hole was, or at least where I think the hole was that I could see. Let's get a little bit more light, see if you can see a bit clearer. So the idea is that cures in about an hour, so I'm going to give that an hour and then use the self-amalgamating tape to go around that. Hopefully that'll give us enough of a temporary fix to do the job. Just as an aside, you can see the thermostat's in place there, and there's the thermostat housing. Now I am wondering whether the thermostat housing has been leaking down onto that pipe, which would explain why it was so rusted. So I might need to check that when we put it all back together, but as a temporary fix, hopefully it's going to hold enough. So what have we got? What I've done, and this is by no means a permanent fix, that's self-amalgamating tape that I've wrapped around. So underneath we've got the leak sealer actually over the hole, then we've got self-amalgamating tape wrapped around, and then a duct tape on the outside to hold the self-amalgamating tape into place. Now hopefully that will be enough as a temporary repair until in a couple of days time we get the replacement pipe. Now looking at the pipe replacement, one end of it, I'm not sure if you'll see this very clearly, there we go, that goes into the heater matrix into the car, and then following the pipe along you can see it goes down towards the turbo, but it branches off. There's one rubber hose branching off it, and then the metal pipe continues down. So I think the replacement will need to have the turbo intake pipe off again, and we'll see how we get to it from there. But there's one bolt that holds it back here, and that's giving me a little bit more flex. That's how I got in behind to do that. So I'm going to put the thermostat body back on again, and we'll put a few bits together, and then what we can do is we can put some fluid in the reservoir, and we'll see if that holds. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more car fixes as well, and like and comment if you like what you see.